Today we will try to learn about how we are going to read the data. Datas are especially in this particular SAS we are dealing with either a standard data or a non-standard data. I'll give you a couple of examples where it will show that what kind of standards and the non-standards data we are going to have further. So, especially datas are of two types. Number one, standard data. Number two, non-standard data. Now, what is standard data and what is non-standard data? Okay, especially standard data comes like if you have character or if you have a numeric data, which is very common across all the programming languages. So example would be character. It will contain letters, numbers, special character, etc. What are examples of character data? Example, let's take name of a person Alex. Then any numeric value, suppose this is a numeric value, this is also character data. And suppose any special character, like if any phone number is there, uh, any mobile number is there, it contains the special characters like a hyphen and the plus symbol. So this all makes a special character data. So all comes under the character data only. Now let's see that what is numeric data. It will contain only numbers. Since we have to perform some mathematical operations, so it contains only number, as the name itself suggests, a numeric data. Example, any number if you pick it, like that. Okay, any numbers. Now this is clear so far. These are the standards and the non-standard data. Now we'll move towards the non-standard data. So far we have discussed only about the standard data. Now non-standard data are pretty much important, because for that purpose majorly this format and formats we have to remember what kind of data it is, how we going to read and display the data, because such to read and display the data, we it's involved the SAS compiler. Usually we know that what is the type of value a SAS compiler will understand majorly is the numeric only, in the form of numbers. Whatever data we are displaying is a date, any time, any kind of suppose any salary like currency of any particular country. So anything what we are displaying, the SAS will consider those only in terms of numbers. So for that we have to know that what kind of format informant need to be applied over such non-standard data so that SAS will interpret it correctly. So we'll see it further about this point. So for the non-standard data, what is the majorly we are categorizing in the form of date and time, and another one, let's take currency. Currency will have like any value will have dollars, any particular country related, so that we'll see further. So for date and time, let's keep it in B. Date and time, as the name itself says, that it will contain like majorly any kind of numbers and some characters as well it will have. So we'll see that it will contain numbers and also some characters. Example, suppose let's take today's date, 4th January 2025. Like a slash, we have a forward slash, that is a space, this kind of characters which are part of date and time presentation. And suppose if we are presenting example, what's the time, it's 9:20 p.m. That is another way how we present our data in a real time. So these kind of datas are non-standard ones, and we have to apply certain formats in formats so that SAS will understand it correctly and will perform some kind of any kind of display calculation, anything which you'd like to take further. We'll see that. We'll go for another type, that is called currency. Now what will currency contain majorly? Currency will contain again the numbers, and there would be some special characters. Like if we'll see further about the dollar, if you have to present the data in dollars, like that, it will contain numbers and some special character. Example, suppose we are presenting the salary of a person like $3,200, or suppose we are presenting in the form of some INR values, uh, like as an entire package of a person in INR precisely. So we went for the comma values, this and this. These are two different values, so I have used and here. That's enough. So far, is it clear? Anyone can confirm? Okay, it was very basic. What kind of data we are expecting? Now we'll see further. Okay, now what data we are expecting to read, in which format, and how it should appear. Okay, so the very first thing, let's create our data set using cards or data line statement, which we already covered so far. So let's take yeah. So now what data I am creating here, let me mention a scenario. So I'm collecting a data of suppose three subjects um, to a certain site. They have enrolled for a particular clinical trial, and these sites are present to a particular region or a location in the entire world, and some kind of dose is administered. And this, we are interested to only know that what is the start of dose and what is the end of a dose. The dose of you can say the clinical trial over which we are performing, the drug dose I'm talking about here. So I'll create a data set called pt dose here. Now the very first thing is what, either we can go for cards or data line statement, or either we can go for reading an external data file, which we already covered. So let's go for the data line statement or card statement at this moment. So for the first thing is we will use the input statement. Why? Because to know, to tell the SAS compiler that what are the variables it's going to be present after that cards. So we have to follow the same sequence of variable. These things we have covered in the previous classes. So in the input, let me be interested in PID as a patient ID. I'm interested for RGN as a region. PID is a numeric value. Region is a character. Region in the sense, as I mentioned, which particular region or the part of the world this site where the subject has enrolled is present. So that I have to use a dollar symbol to mention that it's a character field. Then after that, STDT is another variable, start date of dose, and ENDT for end date of dose. Now I'll give a card statement. Let me start giving the value C1001. Suppose it's region is, I'm taking the country's name here, New Zealand for NZ. Then start date. Okay, now start date, I'm writing it the format like 1st Jan 2025. And what is my end date? End date is 3rd Jan 2025. Similarly, let's create two more records and let's update the details. Let's keep it 2 to 4. Let's repeat 1 to 4 of Jan. That's it. This is the basic data which I have created a sample data. Now I'm gonna use proc print data equal to pt dose, and I'm going to use a run. Let's simply first create our data. Let's run. So we got the data, but now see this point. If you see that our PID and region, which is nothing but the patient ID and the region of like site, we are getting the data, whereas these two data are missing. What is this? This is start date and this is end date. It is coming as a missing record because it's numeric data, that's why coming dot here. Why this is happening? Because usually I have mentioned this as a numeric value. Now this is also a readable format in our day-to-day life, like this is 1st Jan 2025 and the further dates. But SAS will majorly understand the data. You have to tell the SAS, okay, what kind of this data is. First of all, this presentation of data neither comes under the character or numeric, which is nothing but the standard type. So usually date time part usually comes under the non-standard. So for every non-standard, you have to mention that what type of data it is, what is the format of the data, what we is going to be read by the SAS. Then only SAS will properly interpret that, okay, this is the data we are talking about. So for such case, for these kind of things, what you have to do, you have to go for the first thing is informat and second thing is format. Now Now, what is informat and what is format? See, informats are majorly, it's like you have to tell the SAS that what kind of data, what kind of non-standard data you are going through read, and that you have to present in a manner which is readable for us as well. Now, the definition would be, let's write it out. Informat and format. It will tell the SAS to read the non-standard data and convert it to standard format. What kind of standard formats we are having? Either the character or the numeric. And I already told you that SAS will save every values with reference to the initial date, which is 1st Jan 1960. It will always give you the difference between these two dates if you are dealing with the date values here. So these formats and informats are majorly, right now we are focusing on date and time at this moment, and we'll move ahead further for the currency part as well in later part of the session. So SAS, it will tell the SAS in format statement or the thing that you have a non-standard data. That non-standard data, how you have to read. So SAS will read by our command of the informat. We are telling explicitly to SAS, and it will convert to the standard format. Whereas if you go for the format, it will do just opposite of it. It will tell SAS to write the standard data and convert it to non-standard format. It will read and write. Read means it will going to read something, whatever data you are passing under the cards or via some external file statement. And for format, it will display or it will write. Yeah, it will write the standard data and convert it to the non-standard format. Let's use word called display. The standard data, display the standard data, and after converting into non-standard format. Now, how are we going to do that? We're going to use a keyword called informat. Now, this informat, how you have to pass, I am not bothered about the PID and the region. Why? Because these two are my standard data. This comes under the standard category. This is numeric, this is character. SAS will read it. I am bothered about these data which comes under the non-standard. So we have to give it explicitly what data this is. So sooner or later you will understand, okay, how we going to present the data in the form of date or time. So what form you have to use it. So far, let's start with the standard format called date 9 dot. Date 9 dot means, if you see here the count of the characters, there are 9 characters. So this 9 signifies the number of characters in the sense, as you know that characters is nothing but it will contain your numbers on the letters as well. If you go up and see, I have just written the same. It will contain the letters, numbers, etc. So there are 9 characters. So this 9 signifies that. And date is what? Date is, you can say, This is a informat value what we have to use. It will signify that this is a date we are dealing with. Date 9 dot. Similar goes for ENDT as well. So ENDT as well, we are we are using the date 9 dot format. Date 9 dot informat, sorry. So this statement only will explain these as that okay, this is a non-standard data, and this data is how we have to read this data by using date 9 dot. So now let me run this patch and show you how SAS after reading it will display. Now SAS will display in a numeric format here, numeric values, sorry. It will be numeric values. As I mentioned, the date difference is always with respect to the 1st Jan 1960. If you want to check, suppose 2nd Jan, just for the time being, if we try to change the data just to see that okay how the numbers are appearing, you can see this what data we have written. 2nd Jan 1960 should be there, and if you try to run this, this will be coming as a 1. 1 is nothing but the number of day difference, as I mentioned you earlier already. I'll change it back to my original data. Is it clear? Any doubts so far? Okay, so far you understood that how we applied the informat. Okay, informat, after applying, it will convert it to a number, for number value. Now this number value, if you see, if you try to display this to me or to anyone, as a human we will not able to understand okay this number signifies what. If you present this data, I can't tell you what is the start and end days of the dose actually, because SAS will understand this number, we can't understand. It's like some 23,742 some number. So then I'm going to present this, I'm going to use the same format statement. Now format will tell what? Format will display your standard data. Standard data in the sense this is your standard data. It's a numeric. Numeric and character are the standard data, as I already mentioned you. So to present these things, we have to again change it to non-standard format, which will be readable by us. So for that case, let me apply the same thing again, but with a format statement. Why? Just to make sure that my conversion is happening correct or not, in order to cross check, because the number is quite huge. It won't be understandable for me whether the number is correct or not, SAS has read my data correctly or not. So I'm using the same here, date 9 again. You can change as well, it's up to you, but so far let me just check that first, whether my data is read properly or not, whether I did any mistake or not. So if you run this again, now you see that the data I read is correct. 01 Jan 2025, 03 Jan, 02 to 4, 1 to 4. And if you go back and see, I have written the same data here. So these two statements we have to use. One is a informat and one is a format, in order to make sure that SAS is reading our data correctly, non-standard to standard and the vice versa. So these things are very important in SAS, because to reading the data, we will get any kind of data, any random data, and to read and interpret it correctly, that is our main intention is. Because if the data is not reading correctly, means we will displaying the wrong data, which is not our main interest is, right? Our main interest is to present the data correctly. Okay, so far this is clear, right? So now let's move ahead. Let me copy this same data and let me show you again. Okay, now this would be example number 2. I'll just change now format here this time. I'll see that okay, what are the other formats? There are many formats which exist, okay, for the date related and the time related also, we'll see it further. So that I'll provide you separately in some file where you can go and refer all the date and time formats, which will be handy for you in your future. So far, let me try to change. There's another format. Okay, let's try. So if you see this case, we are reading data in the date 9, as I mentioned. Let me change the format entirely to see that whether can we change the entire the way we have read the data. We going to can we present it into another way? So yes, we can present it by any way. Let's take an example of week date 20 dot. That is another format. And let's change this end date into completely another one. So this would be, let's take word date x20 dot. Word date x20 dot, correct. So now what is these two formats precisely? These are like where we will present our week date in the 20 length format. As I mentioned you already, this 9 number is nothing but the length of the characters which we are assigning. Actually we are presenting here 20 length data. So let me run the same patch of code to show you that how our data will change. Now see, the same data I have represented in another way here. I have represented along with my day as the first three letters Wednesday, which is like Jan 1 2025. So this is one way of representing, which is week 20 dot. I have written here word datx 20 dot. If you go to result and if you see here, that is another way. First letter, then a space, then your month is entirely month will come on a space, and again the four letters of year will come. So many different formats are there, which document I'm gonna share. You can go through that document, and then you can decide, okay, as part of presented, how data presentation is required for my scenario, and what format or informat I should apply for. Is that clear? Okay. Okay. So let me just write it here. Date. This below one is only for date. Let me copy the same patch again. And now this time we're going to deal with time now. Time. Okay, let me do a small amendment in the same program. Let me present the time this time. Instead of date, I'm interested with the time. So I'll write STTM as a start time and ENTM as a end time, the variable names. Similar, I'll update here STTM. Now for the time related, our cards data, the dates will also, the time will also change here. Okay. Now usually what is the time format majorly? Okay, time formats are, if you see the time here, let me write the time format for you. It's majorly like HH, MM, SS. Okay. Now there's a possibility of writing AM or PM as well, but I'll keep it an optional, like optional to present. If you would like to present, it's fine in that way. Otherwise, you can go for 24-hour clock as well. If you go for 24-hour, no need of AM PM. Otherwise, for 12 hours, you have to present the data. So for this case, now let's change our card statement. Let's write, suppose, what's the time now? It's 9. So it will become 21:43 and 00 seconds. it started now, and when it will end, the next 22, 40, 34, 23 seconds. Similarly, I'll just update with some values below as well. Twenty thirteen with, okay, so initial two card statement I have followed the 24 hours, and for the below one, let me just follow 12 or something. 40, 13. Okay, so far let's follow the 24 hours only. In the next example, we'll follow that AM PM as well, otherwise it'll get mixed up. So what the format is usually for the time, when we are dealing with the straightforward the time values. So the very basic format what we have to present is, if we are dealing with HHMMSS, you can see that the number of characters, how many are there? 2, 4, 6, 7 and 8. Even the colon or the comma, everything should be considered as a character if you are counting it, just for your reference. Otherwise, once you start working, then it become handy. Okay, you will remember it what you have to use. So the main format what we are using here, if we are dealing with hour, minute and second, it is time 8 dot. If you are not dealing with second, suppose this the highlighted part is not there in your data, only hh colon mm, so then it becomes how many characters? 2, 3 and 2, 3 to 5. So then it becomes time 5 dot. So the last number will vary depending on the data, how it is appearing for you. Is that clear? That is time 8 dot. We're going to use the similar time at this moment, and we'll change in the next example. Okay, let's see that. Suppose let's not use first any format in format to see that how the SAS is reacting, which I already showed you. You can see that again time is missing. So for this case, you have to include the format as well as the informat statement. Now, first thing, if we include only in format, it will convert in the form of numeric value. You can see that this is a numeric value, and how this numeric value is appearing for the time. Anyone can give a try how this numeric value is coming. For the date, you are clear that okay, in the number of days compared to 01 Jan 1960 is something. Okay, how this numeric value is appearing? Anyone? Any idea? For time precisely I'm asking. Any idea? Anyone can say? Okay, not an issue. See, for when you are going to deal with the time, so SAS time majorly it will check as a reference from the midnight. Midnight means which is in 24 hours clock is 000, right? It will struck as a midnight hour. So from there it will cross check. We can write, okay, before writing we can just have a look. Let me just convert one number close to midnight just to see whether it is coming or not. You can see that, see, this is midnight 12 1 minute and 0 second. It means ultimately it's just 12 1. Simple. So if you run this patch of code, focus on this first record start time, that will be 60. So For time related, it always show you the difference in terms of seconds, whereas for date related, it always shows in the form of days. Now reference is different. For date it's 1st Jan 1960, for time is midnight. So let's just change it back to our own usual time, and we can write a patch here how the SAS time is they're reading. SAS time. Okay, now for SAS time related, the reference is midnight, which is HHMMSS format. Okay, the value represents the number of seconds. Spelling CNT here is correct. Represents the number of seconds between midnight and a specific time. I think that would be enough to understand. Yeah, that is like time. Okay, let me save it. Okay, make sure when you are working on these SAS studios, just save your things with in between, because sometimes it happens session will expire and then all what you have written is gone. As I already told, we do in work library something, so always try to save your data programs or the datas. Okay, so as I already showed you, once we ran this informat, we got in a numeric value, and now I'll apply the same format just to see that whether it's read correctly. Yes, these all data are the same what I have presented there. Now that was one example for the time 8 dot. Now it comes, there's another one which you have to present in the form of, if suppose I am dealing with the uh, something called AM PM data. Okay, let's present the same data in the AM PM format. Okay, now with this time, let's take an example for AM PM. Let's take an example for AM PM related with your time and date together. So for that, I'll copy this. So far we have done separately date and time. So now I'm taking AM PM with time and date together. Date and time combined. Okay, I've copied it wrong place. It should go up right here. You come down and get this. Okay, now for date and time, I'm gonna represent the same scenario with date and time together. Now how it's going to differ now. Now for the date and time together, let's change our data STDTM. Okay, DTM is usually represents, these are the standard naming convention what we follow in our production as well, which is how I am giving you. DTM stands for date and time. Okay, DTM. Only TM and only DT, it's for the time and date respectively. So I'm gonna change here as a DTM. Now let's change the first, the card statement. What kind of data it's going to read? Suppose in the same time, let's just add a date what we were doing. 1st Jan, let's make it 1st Jan 2025 with the colon. You have to present the data. Okay, so this part is nothing but the date. Then you can't put a space in your data because we are writing here the input statement without any delimiter part. So as you already aware about this, this input statement signifies we are going for a default delimiter, which is space. So that's why your data should be in continuous together, because space means SAS will understand that's a different data. So now let's copy and modify the data. 1, 2, 3. 3 Jan. This is 4. This is 4. So here you can see that I have presented the date time together right now. Let's take an example for AM PM. Now for AM PM related, you are going to present, okay, you are going to present the data in the form of this suffix with value of AM PM, which I already told. Let's add here, suppose this is PM, this is also PM, and let's make something AM as well. 01 we'll add as a AM data. Now you can see this is like 0124. This is in night. If you say, if this is 24-hour clock, this is in night time 124 AM, whereas this is like 1034 night of PM value here. This is how I have deferred the data. Now let's run the data without the informat and format. Okay, I think I didn't change the format here. Let's change the format as well. Okay, let's change once we are done with this batch of code. Let's run the data first. Now you again see that stddm, these two data are coming as a missing. I have already explained you. Now what will be the correct format and format for it? Now since we are using date time together here, I'll go for different formats for start and end date. Okay, just to cover two different together, let's go for date time 20 dot. I already told you that the number signifies the number of characters is going to be read. Okay, we have written here 20 characters for the informat. Now if you're going to read this, 20 is the maximum length which we have provided here. So like if you read out 2 3 5 5 4 9, every single thing is getting count. This has become 10th. 2 to 4 to 6 7 8. So 20 is a maximum length I have provided my data to get read. Why 20? Because if you see the date here, I have written the PM as well. So P and M itself makes another character. So the second data is 20 characters, whereas the first data is 18 characters. So if you give the maximum value as a 20, it will read 18 by default. So if you give only 18, so these data won't be read properly because of AM PM is also there exist. So let me change actually the data, this date time 20 to end time, because we applied AM PM only there. Let me apply date time 20 dot, and for the start, which is of like 18 characters, we can go for, we can go for 18. Now we are getting the data in this format. Okay, now sttm, okay, sorry, I didn't change the variable here. It should be d. You can see that the data is coming correctly and it is read correctly, the same data we have written in the card statement as well. Now here in this, my am/pm part is not coming in my end time, though it is going, I have given the 20, but it is 20 is not reading my am/pm word, whereas my start date is already given 18 and nothing is getting truncated, everything is coming correct. So in this case, in another end, okay, sorry, I think I presented here 18. Let's try to run 20 and see that in a format. Yeah, my am/pm is not there. So for that am/pm, if you want to present as well in your output in the form the way it is written, so there is a format called am/pm precisely. How we going to rewrite? We can mention is at date am/pm 20 dot. Remove this extra. Dot, okay. Okay, this format is not getting applied here. Date am/pm 20 dot. Okay, I'll check about this format. This informat date am/pm. I'll go back and cross check and I'll inform you in the next class about this date am/pm 20 dot. So far we can go ahead if you want to present the data in 20. I'll inform you back about this point. There are so many formats which is already exist. Sometimes you have to go and cross check that, okay, which particular is going to read correctly in the data wise. So far is it clear? This all date time together and things. Any doubts so far? Okay, so the last point what we're going to go is the another non-standard which is called currency. How currency is going to read. Okay, now for can you be on mute, both of you, please? Yeah, thank you. Now, okay, before jumping for a currency, let me show you another thing how you can present something. Okay, example, suppose you don't want to write it again and again. Example, you are already giving here the input statement. Okay, this input you are already giving all the variable names, then again in the informant statement you are repeating these variables. So in such scenario, what is alternative way of writing it up? Okay, which will be alternative way. So instead of writing this informat as a statement, what I can do is I can club it with the input. How I'm going to club it? I'm going to write at the time of input directly. Instead of writing into two separate lines, this will also work. So this line number 86 with the input also tells the SAS that whatever value format you are writing in format you are writing here, the value of it, this will going to read in this informat only. So either you go with the previous way writing it separately or you mention it like this, it will work. Let's run this patch and we can see we still got the data and there is no log errors. Okay, so far I didn't check the errors and warnings, but do check in your program. I was assured that okay, there is no log issue, so in the entire session I didn't check the log part. but do check your log. That's the correct practice to follow. So this is how we do. So now there will be the last non-standard data, which is a currency. Let's see how the currency would be read and how we can do. So all these are nothing but how to read your non-standard data. This entire session was about. Let's write currency. Okay, now for the currency related, uh, we have to take some different example. Okay, something called salary of some person, like that. Okay, let's take another example. Suppose, let's take an employee and its salary. Let's make it simple. So for this, I'm going to write a data emp employee sal for salary. Now I'm going to write again the input statement. One is emp id, which is numeric, and salary is also numeric, as we deal with. There's no character as such. So for this, it becomes sal for salary, which is a numeric. I'll go for card statement. 1001 is the employee, and suppose the person's salary is 25,000, 1002, and this time suppose its salary is 500. Just assume it, and go for run prop print data equal to emp sal and run. Yeah. So let me run this patch of code about currency. Again the same thing. Why sal came? Because there was no characters. As I mentioned currency earlier, there's any special characters would be there. So why above one is not coming? Because we have used comma. Comma is considered as a special character. That's why the data for first digit doesn't came, whereas for second it came by default. Now to read the data correctly, again the same scenario, we have to provide some informats and the formats in order to read it correctly. So for that, now see, whenever we have a comma, okay, we have two things in salary or the currency part. Usually this data type it comes, it's like one is a comma and one is a dollar. Two major formats what we are using. Now for the comma related, we're going to write it here, comma, and you have to count how many characters are there. 336, there will be 6, then you'll write 6 dot. That is right, in format you have declared. Now if you run this patch and see, is SAS converting it to numeric? It's converting it to numeric value 25,000. If you go here and see 25,000, so means it is reading correctly as per our desire. Now to present also, the way I have written in the form, I have written in the form of comma, but SAS is giving just a numeric value. So again the same scenario what we have learned so far, we'll go for a format and we'll apply only on sal, comma, 6 dot. Now if you're going to run this, the data would be exactly presented the way it is presented in cards. You can see with the comma data is coming here. Is this clear? Comma part. I'll take it as a clear and I'll proceed ahead. Let's take the same example again with another format. Now this format, the next time, suppose in this format I would like to present my data. Suppose I'm reading in the comma only, but I would like to present my data in complete different format. I have already told, right, we can change the format in format. It is not mandatory that it should be same. Suppose I would like to present in the form of dollar. Assume that it was not INR, actually it was a dollars, actually the value what was present here. So for dollar related, you have to make sure that one thing, whenever you are presenting in the form of dollar, okay, always you have to add one number extra than the maximum size of this data you have. So you have here maximum 6 size of data, 6, right, you have written already. So once I'm going to present my data in dollar, which would be at a prefix starting of it, you have to write it as a dollar 7 dot. Why? Because these are 6 characters and seventh is nothing but my dollar symbol. So when I'm going to run the same patch now, it will present me in the dollar format. So this is how a slight changes are there, but you can present your data. Okay. Now one important thing is, if how we going to read the data if it is in a decimal value. Okay, so far we are dealing just with the numbers. So let's take a last example for the day, that would be decimal values. Now suppose I'm presenting my data in the form of same salary in this. Now I would like to read my data in this format. Suppose in this 25,000 I have added 007, 3 decimals after that, assume. And for 500, let's make it also some comma related. Let's make it something 50,000 with a dot. And how many decimals? Let's keep it this 678. Okay, so here the salaries are presented in the form of comma, first of all, both of them, and that too in the decimal value. So for this scenario, if I'm going to read, how I'm going to read now? See, first of all, both are my comma data. So my in format would be comma. That is first thing. Now, how many total characters are there? Okay, suppose if I reduce 10 here. Now, if you see that the first subject is having first employee is having less character values compared to the second, so you have to always go with the higher value, the maximum length you have to provide, otherwise the data truncation will happen. So you will read the second data, not the first only. So in this, if you read out 2 3 5 6 7 and 3 more 10, so total there are 10 here with the comma values. As I mentioned you, how many are there total? Total there are 10 values. I'm gonna write here 10, then a dot would remain as it is. After that I have to mention out how many decimal value are there in your data maximum. Above is 2, below is 3, you will write 3. So then it becomes your format in format comma 10.3. Okay, and if you apply the format now, let's apply this single in format and just see our data is coming as it is, the way is desired. And now let's read the data in the form of formats. So at reading the data, suppose I want to present in a form of dollar again. Now for dollar, I need to make sure I will present another value for the dollar 11.3. Now let me present the data. We are getting 678 as it is, and the above one was 07, that is also presented in the form of 3 decimal with a 0 at last. So I have converted in the dot 3 decimal formats. Is this clear? Any doubts in this? Okay, so this was the last example for the day. Let me save the data. I'll provide you this one.